Hey there, this is Joshua Porter with the Elite Seller Show, bringing you another episode. Today's guest, we're featuring Movley. We have McClain Warren and we have Sajag Agarwal. Sajag, you are the CEO of Movley, and McClain, she is the branding acquisition manager and social media expert for Movley. So, guys, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hey everybody, yeah, I'm Sajag. So I'm the founder of Movley. A little bit about me. So before founding Movley, I used to run my own ecom brand. Grew that to 2 million a year. Lived in Shenzhen for a little bit of time, in China for a few months, and actually almost half. It was a half year, so a little bit more than a few months. And yeah, so kind of been through the experience on the ecom side. Started ecom like 10 years ago, moving from eBay, doing like retail arbitrage, then moving into PL, building out my own brand, and now I'm on the service provider side. So just kind of been through all the steps, I guess.
Awesome. And McClain Warren, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're on all the podcasts lately.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like your introduction was pretty right on, but I have always loved copywriting. I've been specifically in the Amazon space with regards to marketing, listing optimization, SEO, stuff like that, for probably about 6 years, and then kind of wanted to transition out of just that field. So now I work with Movley, which has been an awesome experience, doing creative writing and content marketing, as you prefaced. And yeah, I just love it, and I'm loving seeing the company grow.
Awesome. That's great, man. You guys are just popping up out of nowhere, and it just seems like you guys have been around for quite some time. So in today's topic on the Elite Seller Show, we're definitely going to be talking about how bad quality control today can lower your exit valuation after 3 years. And this is all about inspection and QC. So Sajag, you obviously have a good amount of experience in dealing with this. How did you get involved into the logistics, inspection, quality control aspect of the business?
Yeah, so if you told me like 3 years ago, or even like 5 years ago, especially, that I would be working in inspections in the supply chain, I would have told you you're crazy. I used to be one of those techies that always wanted to kind of work on like smart home and stuff like that. And supply chain is like the most like unsexy industry on earth. So I'm really surprised that I ended up here. But the reason I ended up here is basically because I started off building my own brand on Amazon. And that was the electronics brand. And actually, we wanted to build into smart home and stuff like that long term. But we started off just building cash flows with really simple stuff. So we had everything from like electronic accessories, like cell phone accessories, fabrics, kind of the little gimmicky stuff you buy, all the way down to like more complex electronics. So we sold high performance chargers. So we had stuff that was custom engineered, stuff that was just like basic, you buy it off the shelves kind of thing. And we were starting to have quality control problems with pretty much all of our products. So some of our products, we got really lucky. We didn't have quality control problems initially, and then we started having quality control problems later. Other products, we started having QC issues initially, and it just became crazy. So some of our listings, we went from 5 stars to all the way down to 3, 2 stars, and our products had to be relisted, relaunched. I lost a ton of money. We had returns, we had warranty claims, just problems across the board. And it was just really tough to kind of manage all of that. And that's when I ended up moving to Shenzhen, because at that time we had worked with quite a few numbers of quality control companies, and we were still getting past inspections despite having these problems. Mm-hmm. So then after moving to Shenzhen, I started doing my own inspections and kind of learning the process, how the inspection process worked. Even watched one of my inspectors basically botch up one of my inspections and firsthand. And then I was like, wow, like this is like ridiculous. And that's when I started doing my own inspections. We started catching problems. We started getting things under control. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, all right, obviously I can't live in China forever, right? I have to move out eventually. I can't be building a business doing my own inspections. So I started building out my own in-house team in Shenzhen. And then that team, when we started hiring them, that team started having a lot of problems. So we had them taking bribes from the suppliers. We had problems with the inspections being ineffective. They were all great for a couple of months. And then we had problems again after a few months. And it just became this crazy mess where we really had no accountability and we had kind of no visibility into what was going on. And that's when I actually founded Movley, because I found there was a lot of improvements that could be made by applying technology and running, like inspections have been an industry that have been pretty much the same for the last 50, 60, 80 years. Like they introduced computers and they stopped faxing reports. They now, put them in a PDF. And that's about like the only change that's been in the industry for the last like 20, 30 years. So there's a lot of room for improvement in the industry. And that's kind of where I started in with inspections. So what Movley does is we actually give you a full service quality control team for the cost of an inspection. And the reason the model was designed like that was because of those same experiences I have, where the inspectors didn't really understand the products, know how to inspect it. They didn't really have accountability. And at the same time, working with the standard model, you want the customizability, the flexibility of having your own in-house team on the ground. But at the same time, you want to have the controls, the scales, the experience of a third party that has all this aggregated data, this user data, can monitor their inspectors, make sure they're doing a good job, and have all those kind of processes in place. So that's kind of where Movley came in the middle. It was kind of a mesh of having your own in-house team with the scale of having a very large third party working on your behalf.
No, that's pretty impressive that you came up with such a very unique and desirable business model in such a much needed time. I imagine since everything that happened with the pandemic last year, that this has actually exploded your business and helped you gain massive traction in the Amazon space, especially since quality control in another country can be such a fiduciary and finicky process to manage. And you're basing it all on trust and assuming that these cultural implications that have happened over the last 80 years when it comes to logistics could easily just be changed overnight, which is simple, small things by having a third party association involved and doing just small incremental technological changes has had a massive impact. What would you guys have to say in regards to the growth of the business over the past couple of years?
Yeah, so the growth of the business has been pretty crazy in the last couple of years. So we launched about 3 years ago, and we went to the market publicly about 1 year ago, right before the pandemic started. So it was an interesting time for us. And things really picked up pretty quickly. We actually started doing a lot of PPE inspections last year. And that's kind of where we started off. It was a PPE. And I remember we did one of our first inspections were for PPE, KN95 masks. They were like class 2 FDA certified. And when we went into the inspection, we found out like 8% of them had holes. So it was a little bit ridiculous. And we saved a hospital from a pretty bad order that could have created some issues. But growth has been pretty crazy. So actually just in the last, we've been in public for about a year now. Just in the last 2 months, we actually ended up 3xing our revenue, and we increased it 50% just in the last week. So it's been pretty crazy as far as growth goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually see that with the massive amount of social media presence that you guys have. And, thankfully with the help of McClain Warren over here, she's definitely taking the helm and taking care of that. And I imagine that she helped a ton of weight off your shoulders when it comes to managing the business with high level processes. So what would you say that truly makes you different than other inspection companies outside of having third-party vendors? What is the organic feel that Movley can actually generate and make people want to just come back again and again with the level of trust?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the biggest impacts is really our service pods. So our service pods, what we do is anytime we work with a client, this is one of the reasons that a lot of really big brands all the way down to really small brands like to work with us. Is because of our service pods. Every client that works with us gets assigned what we like to call a service pod. And a service pod is essentially a team of 5 people. There's 3 inspection specialists, an account manager, and a local relations specialist. And essentially what we do is when you work with us and you get assigned a service pod, that's essentially your quality control team. So regardless of who you're working with on the inspection side, whoever's going doing your inspection, what kind of products you have one service pod that understands your business, your challenges, and your products. And they work with you to manage your inspections, book your inspections. They go through the inspection process with you. So they'll give you recommendations. We actually aggregate data across all clients. So to give you an example, we had a client who had a water balloon and they had leaks in their water balloons post-inspection. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is that they weren't actually testing for leaks during the inspection process. So when they started working with us and they notified their service pod, hey, we're having leaks in our balloons, the service pod worked with them. We put in place a new test. And then every other customer with balloons got a recommendation next time they did their inspection that, hey, we had a customer who experienced leaks in their balloons. We noticed you didn't have this test. We recommend adding this test before you have this issue and doing it on this sample size. And that expands for all products. So that's one of the big things about having our service pod is they share all this experience from all these other service pods. They use all of our insights that we get to then do better and better inspections over time. And that's one of the really cool things about Movley. And then in addition to that, your service pods also work with you to book those inspections. They manage the inspections. So if the inspector has any problems during the inspection process or they don't understand anything, your service pod is the one actually working with your inspection company or your service pod is the one working with your inspector to actually make sure that the inspection is done right. And then they also check the reports, they ask questions, they make sure everything looks good. and they report it to you. So it's kind of the feel of having your own in-house team that you can customize and you can keep in any and run in any way you'd like, along with the scale and the controls of having that much larger third party behind you.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Sajag said, which is that I feel like when people are picking inspections and or inspection teams, they're kind of shooting from the dark. Like they don't really know a lot about the process, what they should be doing, where they should be going, who to trust, who not to trust, especially in an industry that's kind of well known for having shady businesses and briberies. So I feel like it's kind of like reaching, blindly through the whole transition. And I think what's cool about Movley is that they really do, as Sajag said, their team walks you through the process, but not only do they walk you through the process, they really kind of help you hone in on what tests you actually need for your product, because there's so many kinds of tests out there, and some of them are really important and some of them are really not. As well as sample size and what makes the most sense for your product. So I think that having that relationship with your inner inspection team is not something most people offer.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually quite unique that you guys have it broken down so systematically, because I know that for people, Amazon sellers that sell toys, they have to get unique tests, whether it's a lead test, a choking test, a hazard test, a hazmat test. There's several different tests that they have to get for that. And that could essentially, if they don't get those tests, their products could just be left as stranded inventory, or they may not even actually get into the United States in the first place. So the fact that you guys have a unique system that's going to break it down by that, but adds a level of trust in an industry that is so rife with bribery is a rather unique prospect. So tell me a little bit more about how you guys are shaking up the dichotomy of the logistics and inspection services in China by factoring in these levels of trust. How do you guys prevent internal bribery from happening within a system that's already very rich with this kind of activity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I like to just add, like, in terms of like the tests. So their inspection process is different from the certification process. So like hazmat tests, lead tests, things like that, those are more lab tests that you might want to do on your products, and that's more for compliance. So that's something we're actually building into later this year. We're building out compliance pods. So now you'll have an inspection pod, but you also have a compliance pod that can help you with lab tests, certifications, factory audits, and making sure that you're compliant with all your products and any market you're selling in. So that's something we're building into later this year. But with the inspection process, we can do some of those tests in a limited capacity using factory machinery, just as kind of like a routine check, but it's not something that is kind of like a certified lab result. So you may not be able to use that in your Amazon's process or your Amazon backend, as a submit, like, hey, here's a Movley inspection report. It's more so for your QC to make sure your products are built right on a day-to-day order. But we are working and building into that certification part later this year. So that's something we're super excited about. And then in terms of fraud and bribery, just to answer your question there, so there's a lot of cool things that we do at Movley. And what I'm really excited about is actually the bigger vision of what we're building out. So Movley is only a couple years old, but we've already changed up the game and shook up a lot when it comes to inspections. And we're doing a lot more in the next coming months as well, and the next coming years. One of the cool things about Movley is that we're constantly improving. So a year ago, we launched inspections publicly. Just 5 months ago is when we launched service pods publicly. So service pods were not available until just a few months ago. And we learned over the first 6 months of our business that, hey, this approach would render a lot better results with our customers. So we're always able to improve. And what we do on the fraud and bribery standpoint, I would say we are considerably better than other companies on the fraud and bribery standpoint, which I'll describe what we do in a second. But with the platform and things like that we're building out longer term, it's going to give us even more control and even more visibility into the process that no other inspection company has. So what we do right now is, first of all, we use data analytics. So we actually go and measure on the basis of inspectors, which inspectors pass the most inspections, fail the most inspections. We look at the reports. So one of the cool things is, because your service pod aggregates all this data from all these other clients that have similar products, we actually know exactly how much time your product takes to test. We know exactly how much time your product takes to actually run the inspection process too. And we actually quote that out very specifically, so the inspector is not over committed during the inspection day. And one of the cool things with that is because we can measure how much time the inspector spends at the factory, what their average pass and fail rate is, what number of average defects they report on a general report, things like that on an inspector by inspector basis, we can actually track, okay, hey, these inspectors have a higher risk of fraud. These inspectors are more detailed. They have a lower risk of fraud. And then we use those data analytics to tell us, where we want to look more in depth into, and then make decisions on that. And also for multi-day inspections, we like to send multiple inspectors to the factory. So if you have like a 2 or 3 day inspection, we'd rather send 2 inspectors on the first day and 1 inspector on the second day, or maybe 3 inspectors in 1 day, because multiple inspectors dramatically reduces the risk of fraud. And in addition to that, we like to rotate inspectors and randomize the assignments on an inspection to inspection basis. And we're able to do that really effectively with our model because your service pod is kind of your central point of contact. So they work with your inspectors to make sure that the inspection is done consistently, even if it's a different inspector every single time. And that's kind of what they're there for. But we're building into a really big platform over time that will actually allow us to get body camera footage on the inspection process and then streamline that into a system in real time. That's not going to really field us for like fraud and bribery per se, because if you want to take a bribe, you just cover the camera. Like, you're not going to, we're not going to catch that. But what we can catch is that, hey, is the process followed? Were the number of units inspected correct? And then we can use that along with all the data analytics we get, like, how thorough you are compared to other inspectors
Right.
in the, in the space. And then we can also improve our data analytics by calculating on a machine learning algorithm, like, hey, what's the average pass or fail rate for this industry, for this product, for this test? And we can get a lot more detail than what we're getting right now. So we're going to be building out that platform over the next year or so. And as we build out that platform, that's going to help us over time reduce that risk of fraud as close to 0% as we can.
Okay, that's actually an extremely interesting model, especially with the whole concept of now factoring in body cam footage. It's going to be, it's going to have some interesting takes, especially when it comes to uploading that image, the video aspect of it. So I take it that would also live on the website as well, that they'd be able to fast forward and zoom through something as quickly as that. One thing I definitely want to ask you is, what's the inspection batch rate? Like, is it 10%? Is it that they're opening just one box and checking it, making sure it's quality? Where do you see the biggest hiccup that potentially caused the genesis of Movley? Where like, what exactly was the precipice that caused all of this? Was it the inspectors? Was it the factory? Was it a combination of both? Like, what do you see as the biggest stepping stone to moving things forward?
So just to clarify, so do you mean like in terms of like what's like the biggest reason that inspections mainly fail and what that fail rate looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be one thing. Like, and then also on top of that, how often, what's the percentage of inventory that actually gets inspected? Essentially a batch rate. Like, is it 10%, 20%?
Got you. Yeah. So in terms of past inspections and failed inspections, the average is really difficult. It doesn't really mean much because there's so much variance between different customers, different products, things like that. So we don't really like to use that kind of general framework. But what we have seen is that inspections are much more likely to fail on the first order. So generally the first order is when we see the most issues. And then following orders after that, it kind of progressively reduces, but on an average basis. But really kind of quality control problems, quality fade. We've also had customers that have had great, first 5 inspections on the first 5 orders. And then on the 6th order, it's just terrible. So it's not really like any like standard way it goes, but on an average basis, we have the highest fail rate on the first order inspections. And that's when we see the most things go wrong. Like maybe the color is wrong or there's other problems, things like that. And the second highest is actually on the second order. So a lot of times, the first order goes great and everything is fantastic. The customer reorders, they place a much bigger order. And then the second order, when they scale up production considerably, is when we start having more problems. So maybe the color is not exactly the same, or maybe the product was not built exactly as well as it should be on the second order. So those are kind of the 2 orders we see the most risk at. And then from there, the risk kind of lowers on an order to order basis. And one of the most common reasons of failure is number 1, product test failing. Number 2, workmanship defects. So too many visual defects on the product, which can fail an inspection. And then third, which is really interesting, is carton drop tests being refused. So a lot of factories refuse carton drop tests, and essentially carton drop tests are created to simulate shipping damage. So, if you have a shipping carton, you drop the carton, Like take, for example, you go to an airplane, right? Like you're going to see them literally take your suitcases and like throw them like 3 feet, 10 feet into this conveyor belt. And then they don't give a crap about what's in your suitcase.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing with shipping.
Similar to car crash tests.
Exactly. So, if your factory is scared that dropping your shipping carton from 3 feet is going to break your products and they refuse your test, there's a pretty solid chance that your products are going to come to America or wherever you're shipping them to, and they're going to be broken. So that's one of the most common reasons of failure actually for inspections. And second of all, to answer your second question in terms of what was your second question actually? Sorry.
I forgot. Match rate. I think that was actually the first question. The second question would be, actually, you know what? I also forgot, but that's okay. We definitely have several more questions. So let me ask you this: what are some just quick and most effective ways to quantify a viable inspection versus things that could essentially cause your product to be either stranded or just cause a massive loss of money? And also on top of that, what do you see as the biggest issue for inspections failing? Is it manufacturers? Is it bribery? Just give me your overall experience in dealing with this as not only as yourself as an Amazon seller, but as the CEO of the company.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I remember your previous question. I was on sample sizes. So like, how many units do you test? Mm-hmm. So, and I'll kind of answer those two questions at the same time because they go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. But the two biggest problems that we've seen between like an effective inspection and an ineffective inspection is sample sizes, number one, and number two, product tests. And those are kind of the two biggest problems we've seen. So number one, for sample sizes, that is a huge issue. So a lot of customers, they say, hey, we want to go do an inspection, and maybe they want to save some money on the inspection process. So instead of testing 200 units, they test like 50 units, and they do an inspection in a day versus 2 days, for example. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, I did an inspection, it passed, I should be fine. And then they get mad and they're like, hey, we're having like a 2% defect rate. My inspection company messed up. You guys are terrible, da, 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 da. And the reason that inspection passed and you could still have defects is not necessarily the inspection company, but it's the inspection process. And you have to test a statistically significant amount of products and get a past result on that to have that inspection be effective. If you're not testing a statistically significant amount, a past inspection is really meaningless. It means nothing. So, on Amazon, for example, 1% to 2% of customers leave positive reviews that have a positive experience with your product. But 66% of customers who have negative experiences leave a negative review. So if you have 100 products and you have 2-3% defect rate, you're going to get 2 negative reviews and maybe 2 positive reviews if you're lucky. So 50% of your reviews are going to be negative, and that's not really sustainable. So when it comes to the inspection process, it's incredibly important to test a statistically significant amount for all the tests that you're worried about and for visual defects. So say, for example, you test 50 units. 50 units is really easy. You can just do 1 divided by 50. That's about 2%. So if you have 50 units and you test them and everything goes great, you can still have a 2% defect rate that you didn't test for. If you test 100 units and you test for that, now you're testing to a 1% defect rate. 200 units, you're testing to a 0.5% defect rate. So you have to make sure your number is statistically significant. And we use the AQL table internally to use this. AQL is basically, it's a spec of ISO 2859. ISO stands for International Organization of Standards. They've spent millions and millions of dollars. I think it was funded by the US military to create this statistical model for quality control. And the statistical model basically lays out 3 levels. It's level 1, level 2, and level 3 on the sample sizes. And that essentially dictates how effective the inspection is going to be. So you want to make sure that, as an Amazon seller, level 3 is generally what we recommend. Level 2 is kind of your normal for brick and mortar. So if you sell to Target or Walmart, they might mandate you do level 2 inspections, but you also don't have the risk of higher returns, higher warranty claims, customer reviews, which are permanently reputationally, damageable. So generally, to mitigate those risks at least a little bit, we recommend at least a level 3. And then you can then use that probability method, 1 over 50, 1 over 100 to kind of, go above and beyond level 3 to the point that your risk is reduced. So sample sizes is really important. So, if you have 1,000 units, you test 12, 15, 20 units, and you say, hey, inspection passed, doesn't really mean much. Now, the second thing is that when it comes down to the inspection process is product tests. So a lot of people think, hey, my product is really simple. I don't really have a lot of product tests. And that's a really common thing we hear. We had a customer who came to us with pasta strainers, and they were like, yeah, it's a very simple product. It should be a very quick inspection, just a visual inspection. And it's like, hold up for a second, because there's a lot of things that can happen even for the most simple products, like a pasta strainer, like just a metal product. What can go wrong? Well, first of all, the holes may not be drilled properly, so the water may not flow. Or number two, those handles that hold the pasta strainer up, they can just bend off and come off if there's too much weight.
Right.
Maybe you have logo.
The Velcro, everything that's involved in it. Maybe it's the stitching. It could be something as simple as the padding involved. There's just a ton of variables. I think one of the most important things that you guys definitely touch upon is having the idea that this concept actually comes full circle at the end of the day, right? So with most Amazon sellers, obviously their goal is to one day build up this beautiful, massive brand and eventually sell it. What you guys are focusing on is the long-term ramifications of skipping the important details right at the beginning and not actually securing them. And by not taking care of where their product is coming from and how it's being looked at, could have this massive ripple effect, like a stone in a still river or a still pond, and absolutely have this catastrophic damaging effect on your brand over time, where this could potentially be the ultimate downfall of it, because essentially the inspection process failed along the way, and everybody one hand washed the other by briberies, and now you're looking at all your investments going down the drain.
I would say not only is it important because you send, say, 10% of shoddy products to the US and your clientele gets 20% of them, you get a bad review, and then your reputation is, jeopardized. But not only that, right now, with what's going on with the backlog of supply chains in general, with manufacturing, shipping, all that stuff, if a customer is sending back a product and you have to send it back to China and then hopefully get a turnaround of that product, like that's going to take a really, really long time. And you have to be prepared for that for Q4. So to avoid all of that stuff, you want to make sure your inspections are done right the first time.
Exactly. Because like when you actually, like as McClain is saying, like there's like a huge time period between the time you order your product and then by the time it gets to your customer, you sell your product, and then when your customer reports a problem. So like the handles breaking on a pasta strainer, that might come 60 days after you sold the product. And by then you might have already had all these, 6 months of defective inventory that have already been sold, or you might have had, or in production or at your 3PL. And now you still have to sell these products and then, expect this issue, and then fixing those problems, that's 6 months later. So yeah. It's a huge cycle. And that's why it's really important to invest in that cycle, because by the time you start having problems, it's often too late. And especially if you're a small brand, it can wipe, your entire product, your entire business off the market. And that's huge.
Yeah, it's quite a vicious cycle, isn't it? And one thing that I would definitely like to ask you about Movley is, it seems like the precipice of your business is focused primarily in China. Do you guys have any plans to expand in other marketplaces, like maybe India, maybe South America, where you can actually have a shorter lead time on getting inventory into the United States? Are you planning on getting closer to more emerging Amazon marketplaces?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So right now we're in the middle of raising an institutional round of funding. So once we've raised that round in the next few months, we're actually going to have a lot more resources and manpower to build out our platform, to build out a lot of the cool stuff we're building out. And one of the things we're focused on right after doing that is actually going out and expanding from China to 10, 20, 30 different countries, and scaling that across multiple different countries. So that's something that is definitely coming up, and we'll be able to accommodate inspections in a lot more countries, even potentially the US very, very soon.
Okay, cool. That's actually pretty neat that you guys are going through your second round of angel investors. What would you say is the massive draw that brings the eyes to Movley? What continues to make you guys like center focus when it comes to inspections?
Yeah, I think the biggest drive is really just kind of the Amazon marketplace and kind of the systems that we're seeing. So previously, Amazon has evolved. So like, 5, 6, 7 years ago, Everybody was launching, just general products and putting their logo on it. And now everybody's trying to do different products, unique products, and it's all about branding. And people want to exit their businesses because now they're viewing their businesses more so as assets rather than just cash flow, generating machines. So, when you want to exit your business in 2-3 years, you're getting all this money pumped into aggregators. And we work with a lot of aggregators at Movley for their inspections. So we know how they work, how they run their internal processes, things like that. And what we've learned is that when it comes to actually exiting your business, there's a lot of risks that QC helps mitigate. That helps you drive higher valuations and also get more buyers interested in your business when it's selling. So I think that's been one of the most engaging points of discussion for sellers, because it's almost like a car. It's like if you go take your car to like an off-brand mechanic and you have an issue, sure, you can get that issue fixed, but it can create a lot more problems, and the value of your car is probably going to decline. And it's kind of the same thing with business. If you go fuel your business, especially on the supply chain side, because supply chain is the core of any e-com business. It's really supply chain and marketing. If you don't have supply chain, you can't market. If you don't have marketing, supply chain doesn't matter. So it's like 50% of your business. If you don't invest in your supply chain and have proper processes, systems, procedures, and service providers in place, then when it does come time to sell, when you do have issues, it's going to dramatically, you're driving a car without wheels, essentially.
Yeah, it's all part of the whole 21-point inspection when you get your vehicle checked in. You guys are obviously you guys are pivotal because you're essentially the engine of what's actually going to allow the vehicle to keep on moving, especially if this is the financial vehicle of their business. They definitely want that to be taken care of and to be operating on all cylinders at every given moment. I think what the most interesting aspect of Movley is that you guys are definitely connected fairly well with aggregators. Is there any chance that Movley could eventually become its own aggregator over time? Is that something that you guys plan on doing down in several years? And also a second question, it would be, you guys focus primarily on the inspection process. What about the manufacturing process? Is there ever going to be any kind of inspection process when it comes to molding of new products or design or implementation? Is that going to be also factored into place, or is that just outside of the scope of the business?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So in terms of becoming an aggregator, we don't have any plans to jump into the aggregation space. That's just not our cup of tea. We're not really marketing or branding experts. We're supply chain guys, and we want to stick to the supply chain side. And to go into your second question, we have a lot of really cool things planned coming soon on the supply chain side. So we're starting with inspections. We're starting with quality control right now. And there's a couple of secret projects, so I can't really disclose too much. But one of the reasons we're raising institutional funding is that we're building out into a much larger platform for specifically Amazon brands, marketplace sellers, e-com sellers, generally small businesses, small to medium enterprises. So if you're not a Fortune 500 with billions of dollars, then you're probably going to want to use our platform. So that's kind of what we're building into in the future. So we want to help you find your suppliers without being a middleman. Help you vet them out, help you manage your relationship with them, create leverage with them, as well as run all the different service points in your supply chain from one central platform. So that's what we're building into long term, and we're going to have a lot of news and updates with that over the next year or two as we go raise more funding and institutional investment.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool, man. I like the overall layout of what Movley is trying to do, and I think it's a very unique proposition that is definitely rife for change and a shakeup in the way that inspections are done. I can tell you, in my personal experience when I was selling on Amazon, that one of the biggest hangups that I had, especially with getting my inventory moved, was the fact that I did actually have a lot of inventory arrive damaged. It wasn't either packed correctly, or it was packed incorrectly, or the sample rate that was actually checked was far lower. And I can say, from a new Amazon seller, it might seem like a very good financial decision to cut out inspections, but that could just end up costing you so much in the long run, because that could just be the absolute downfall of your business right from the start. And I can say personally, just don't be cheap like me about doing it the first time around. Just shell out the extra cash. Trust me, if you're already in, if you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. Might as well go forth and just make sure that your business can actually get the leverage that it needs to actually keep itself going.
Did you by any chance have your manufacturing company do the inspections, or did you hire a separate inspection team?
I believe at that time I did have the manufacturer do the inspection, and that was probably not the greatest idea, because there were so many units that didn't arrive with like a little instruction guide that was supposed to be handmade and put in there, and it was just like uh, I would say half of the inventory didn't have half of what it needed, and that just instantaneously killed that listing. It was like dead on arrival. There was nothing I could definitely do about that. So
Yeah, it's really important that people understand that the inspection team is looking out for you and
yeah,
your vested interests. Like, freight forwarders, manufacturers, all of them, they can do inspections, but at the end of the day, it's about protecting them and making most money for them. So it's definitely recommended to get a third party inspection team.
and that's where you guys come into play.
Definitely.
So tell us, we can talk about inspections all day. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourself? So I know, Sajag, you are definitely into a little bit of extreme motorsports, right? So you're into racing. You definitely like to fly planes, obviously not crashing. McClain, you're a bit more down to earth, obviously camping, hiking, just obviously living a very good life in North Carolina. How can people get to know more about you?
Yeah, definitely. So you can follow me on IG, so on Instagram. It's just Sajag.Agarwal, and then connect with me on LinkedIn, things like that, or Facebook. I definitely post a lot there. I'd say that's probably the best way to get in contact with me and kind of just follow on my activities, I guess. But yeah.
All right, and McClain, yourself?
I mean, if you want to get to really know me, take me on a date. But if that's not an option, you can follow me on Facebook, McClain Warren. I also have a LinkedIn page. Instagram is Claini, CLAINE 861. Trying to think if there's any. We also have a Movley Facebook group that you all should join, because it's a really good community of people that really understand or want to understand more supply and chain and inspections. So it's just a good resource to have to talk to people and learn as much as you can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, all this information will be in the description. We'll have the website for Mobley. We'll have the Facebook pages. We'll have the Facebook group. Obviously, we'll have the LinkedIn professional profiles. Not too sure about the Instagrams. Maybe we might squeeze those in there, but who knows? And make sure that you guys definitely subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Listen to us on, watch our videos on YouTube, and you can definitely check out Elite Seller by going to eliteseller.com. You can just apply the code Josh15 for 15% off, and you can start your 14-day free trial. That's 15% off for life. Just apply JOSH15. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you come back for the next episode of the Elite Seller Show. And I just want to thank my lovely guests right over here, McClain Warren and Sajag Agarwal with Movley. That's Movley.com. Check them out to make sure that you guys get your inspections done the right way the first time and save yourself so much money on your business, especially when you go to sell it at the end of the day. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
No problem, guys.